Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. This one is on my Pumpkinhead base mesh, and in this video I pretty much want to create the tree that you see in the reference on the bottom left of the image. The tree looks pretty dead, and it's not. It looks like it's got some moss or something, I don't know, spider webs or creepy Halloween stuff on it. But if you follow my other videos on creating roots with Z-spheres, this is actually a technique that I use in that video, except for I use it for this tree branch. And it's really just a thicker version of that if you look at it. And what I'm doing is just making it a little thicker than the references, because the intent is to actually 3D print this model, and I don't want the tree limbs and branches to be too thin and not be able to support themselves. Once you get in there and try to 3D print it, you'll realize what doesn't work. And so you can see it's a little beefy, but after a while I'll start sculpting on this model. This video is sped up as opposed to the ones that I did for the roots, because those were real time, and I felt like that it wouldn't communicate as well if I had done it in a sped up motion like this. I just want you to kind of get the idea of what's going on and how I'm getting there, because this is a slow process of what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to put in the roots. I'm going to bring in some of the brushes that I created in the other videos to create this base mesh and actually put details on this lower part of the model. Most of it I'm just pushing and pulling, squeezing in some of the Z-sphere nodes in there, and then adding branches off of that. And just going back and forth. The silhouette in the black and white on the top left is used a lot for me, and this is something that I've been trying to use a lot more often since they've put it in ZBrush. It's helped out. It's helped out a lot, considering you can't miss what you can't miss if you never had it, and then now I have it and I'm like, man, this is actually a really cool feature. And it helps out so much in little things, or in a lot of things really. Everything that I do in ZBrush is kind of looked at that little silhouette. So I'm kind of adding more detail. And this would have been kind of slow to play at real time anyway. Once you get into the small parts of it, it's rinse and repeat for this area, and just creating that. And it can drag out a little bit if you were to watch me really do it, and go in from there. In this video I'll pretty much just sculpt on it, but what I want to do is actually add some more little details that are on top of it that you see in the reference, but that'll probably be later on. So now it's kind of getting a shape, a form for this model. And you can see right here the Z-spheres, you can grab it by that main part of the arm, and it's like a bones setup now, and you can actually just play with what you want to get out of it to get a better look or a better model. So trying to make that creepy environment. Everything's kind of droopy and Halloweenish. So I've got my other references in here, and you can see on the mound that there's grass and there's dirt texture and little pumpkins here and there. So that reference right there, it doesn't really show a tree stump, but every other reference has one, so why not, you know? I just want to give a little more character to this base so it can have a little more interest. And so right here I'm actually trying to give it some roots into the base so it actually looks like it's holding on for something. And I'll just kind of drag them out. This is always a fun part to me. I've always enjoyed drawing like trees and just branches and roots. I don't know, it's just always something calming about doing stuff like this and just making it look like it's grabbing onto the earth. The tree doesn't want to let go. It's putting its fingers into the earth. It's always neat. You can see how it goes up and down with the roots. Some of the other roots later on, I kind of try to show poking out of the side. That way, it kind of gives the impression that the roots are dug down deep inside of this mound. There's always like a little story with anything that you build. Even with this tree, your tree is digging into that base, and it's in there, and so you'll see it throughout that whole model. Alright, so we're looking at the model with the silhouette, get an idea, see if that works. Go into the adaptive, and you can see what it looks like with sculpting on it in a bit. So what I do is create that mesh and pretty much delete the other one and just start sculpting on this one. And this is where you add a little more detail into it. And this is where I kind of soften the connection nodes, the little points from here to there, to actually not make it so rigid and looks like a hard angle. This is where you get a chance to soften it up and just pushing and pulling and giving that tree a little bit of character and life. And so just going around doing the details. And again, if I would have played this in real time, it would have seemed like forever. And that's sometimes it doesn't seem like forever when you're doing it. When I'm working on these models, time goes by really fast, and it's really calming just doing this. And so in here, sometimes I'm pushing back into the tree because it's so thick, and I realized that it was a beefier part of the tree, and so I'm just kind of pushing down and giving it some more form, using the subtractive part of the brush to actually push down, and then on the curves push back out. You can see right here, and just same technique, just connecting it, giving it that veiny and connected feel of bark. Try to use the same brush throughout. Later on, I do add like a little noise to it, just to give it a little bit more character. But I don't remember if I keep it. We'll see what happens. I might jump back and forth with it or something. But I just wanted to give a little more variation in case I missed a spot. Sometimes you'll be going around and you're like, man, I missed the whole side of this tree. And I'm just kind of going around, kind of like painting, trying to paint something. You're trying to make sure you don't miss a spot. This tree, trying to give it a little more swirls and interest so that I can actually see a little better shape. And you can see in the top left too, I'm looking at the silhouette at the same time and going back and forth through this. Some of the branches are still a little thick, and I'll probably push them in a little bit later on, but for now it's just a base mesh. And as we move along, as I move along in these models, I'll jump back and forth and I'll refine one place and go to another place, because more or less right now I'm just trying to block in little details here and there. And once they're blocked in, then I can actually go back in and even polish it again, even more with more detail. Because if you put too much of something on there, it's just harder to change later on. So right now I'm just getting the look. This is more for me personally to kind of get an idea. And we can always change this. That's the good thing, is that nothing's set in stone. We can always remodel, adjust as we move forward in this. And so that's a good thing about ZBrush. I like that, is nothing's really permanent. And if you do have to start over, if you do have to change something, there's a way out of that. Almost always, most of the time, unless you got something really crazy, then there's those times too where you just kind of like paint yourself in a corner and you're like, man, either I start over or work with what I got and chop off pieces. And so there's that too. So most of the trees looking like it's getting a little more of that detail in. Going around looking, I missed a big spot right there. See? I'm like, oh, where did that come from? And you probably will never see the bottom of this root, but just in case I decide to pull it up or dig it out or something, it's there. I don't know if that's just, I don't know what you call that. I just got to model everything, and it's just like, I missed that part of the model, and I got to model it, or I got to fix it, I got to move it. So right here I'm using the snake hook brush to actually give it a little more organic feel to it, so it's not so robotic with the Z-spears. And now you can see all the model, how it could be with it. Saving the work, because that's the safe thing to do in case it crashes or anything like that. And there's always the auto save too, the auto back, and it's usually pretty reliable, but at the same time I don't want to rely too much on it and risk losing any work, because that's always a pain. It kind of deflates your cells sometimes when you're getting a stride, and next thing you know something happens and you're like, oh, it didn't work, or I lost my work. So right here I'm going to actually try to add a little more detail, and it's been a long time since I've used the surface noise, and I'm a little rusty. So right here I'm kind of pushing and pulling, trying to get the settings back in, and I realize that I probably need some UVs later on. Do a quick unwrap, I think, but for what I need, I just needed a little bit more chaos on the tree, just to kind of give it some slight detail. And I'm not sure if I keep this detail, but it's something that I wanted to touch on to see if it helped push the tree to look a little bit more detailed and stuff. So is that saying, like, work smarter, not harder? That way I don't have to go in each individual and paint all the little details. I can actually get away with half of it. So yeah, I do kind of do a quick unwrap, copy paste. It turned on my textures for this. And what's interesting about this is that the lighting setup and the lighting scenario actually is something that I end up saving this lighting, and I end up saving my render settings, because I ended up really happy with the final style of the render, and I was just like, ooh, I gotta save that one, because every now and then you'll come across a happy accident, and that's what happened on this video. There was a happy accident of rendering settings, and I was like, I gotta save all this. It's too good to skip. So yeah, the lighting saved now, and then I got the render settings kind of adjusted to where I like. And the look is kind of a 3D printed look, is what I was getting at the end of the video. You'll see, and that's what I kind of like. I was like, man, that looks like a 3D printed rendering. So I'll save it. I could always tweak it later, but. So right here you can see that I'm trying to play with some of the noise settings to kind of get the scale. And I want to get back in there to get some of these modifiers, the wood or the one of them in there, just to kind of get a little more details. And here you can start seeing that the tree is starting to get that detail back in there. It had something to do with the scale, so I had to scale it down pretty small to get it to show up. So right here you can see that the tree's got like a warped look, but I rotate the bark look. So, and it kind of worked a little bit. I barely put it back on when I get out of here, but I wanted like a little bit. There you go. A little bit more detail into the tree. Because using this, it kind of prevents me from having to go map and texture each piece. And if I can get a bark look out of this, then that'll be a halfway win for me. And I thought about applying it, and I do. But at the same time, the back of my mind said, like, don't do that. Like, hold off on keep the settings, but don't apply it yet. So, because I think I still wanted to adjust it as I go. Because I do apply it right here. And it's there, but I'm like, do I want that? Because once I apply that, then I'm gonna have to keep applying it as I go, or I can make it a layer. So I decided to undo this and then go back and just leave it as the noise modifier applied to it instead of it being fully applied. And you'll see in a bit, because I still want to have control over that just in case later on. So I'll move on to the next part, and that's the lower part, the base. And this is something that I've gone over on the other videos as far as details and stuff, but at the same time, I wanted to add a little bit more that dirt feeling at the bottom. So I go through my alphas folder library that I have. And a lot of these are on the Pixelogic website, and I think all of them are. And I pretty much use this as a dirt. With the standard brush, I used it to put the alpha to apply it. I want to kind of give it like a dirt feel to this. And we'll go back in and refine it as we need, but I just want to give it a little more texture. Because at the same time, I'm still going to apply, what do you call it, the roots that I created. And more or less, this is going to be kind of the mud. Looking at the references, it looked like mud, or kind of muddy kind of base with grass and roots coming out of it. So right here, I'm trying to see if it'll droop a little bit more like mud. It kind of does a little bit, but at the same time, it's just kind of playing with it, just kind of getting the look. Looking a little heavy mud. So right here, I'm just trying to play with the intensity to see what a heavier mud looks like, or heavier alpha would look like. See, I'm just kind of scattering it about. This is part of layering the cake. This is like frosting on your cake. Put a little frosting here and there, and you're get a little bit back and forth. But it's starting to look like real cakey, real thick. So we end up changing that in a little bit. I think I dropped that layer. And so since it's on a layer, you can actually drop the intensity to where it's not so heavy. Looking at the layers, I create a new layer and I forget what happened. I'm not a new layer. So what I was gonna do was I was gonna create a duplicate mesh and then push it inward and then sculpt out of it the roots. But it started to be a little bit more problems involved with it because I think I dropped this method in a bit. It was a method I saw on one of the videos a few years ago on Pixelogic, and they had a base mesh and they would sculpt out of it. But for this, I was kind of, I don't know if I was in the right headspace to be able to do it at the time or to figure it out. I just wanted to get something going and I didn't want to lose momentum, so I just kept moving forward. I was going to figure it out, but then I was just like, you know what, let me just go the other way that I plan to do this. But eventually you'll see right here what happens. I'm trying to scale up the roots, and I probably could have done it sculpting out the roots, but that would have defeated the purpose of me creating those brushes. And I didn't want to lose that work that I did to put the brushes in. So in the end, I ended up finding a different method that actually kind of worked in between, a happy medium, because I didn't want to have to fight the root to show up inside of this sub mesh that's inside of the other mesh. In the end, I would have blended them together like a Dynamesh and made them one. So I'm trying to push that upper layer in right here, as you can see, and that works for other techniques, but for this it was a little more problems because the dirt is kind of a little bit more than the roots are showing. So yeah, like I said, usually as you're watching, I'm kind of like trying to fight it, and it's like, come on, roots, you could do this. And I don't think I go this way. I'm like, you know what, deletes, and you know what, I think I delete that one too. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I make another layer. So what I end up doing is just dropping that just a little bit. Okay, so I don't get rid of it, and I end up with this method. So right here you can see those lights I had pre-set up like years ago, and somehow I kind of get a look that I like I said, and I end up saving those settings because I was real happy with it. So you can see right here the roots are kind of like where you can connect them together, and you can make them into a bigger root, or like veins almost. So that's really what it kind of came down to, is playing with this and pushing and pulling. But I want the impression of the roots there, and so I'm kind of playing with the details to see, like, does this work? Because I want to look like some of the roots are in, some of the roots are out, so I want to soften it up here and there. So there we go. So now I kind of get an idea, like, all right, does that look like a root from a distance as I'm looking at it? And so I go this way and start adding them. And these were created in another video, like I said in the beginning of this video, and you can go back and watch how I make those roots with the vector displacement mesh brush. These are three little brushes that I made, and like I said, I didn't want that work to get lost, and so I wanted to try to use them for this because I felt like they, could be handy, and in the end they do work out. The little one I found out was a bit more useful than the big one that had more branches, because the little one I could actually branch off of another root and then branch it off another root and connect, into a bigger one. And that's what was pretty fun, is that like right here you see I connected it and now I made a bigger root. And so this one actually was more useful, like I said, and that was pretty cool to know. I took note of that. Don't make less is more, right? So when you got something to work with, see, and I branched it off of there, you can see that little root I branched off a root and a little root, and it made like a tiny root. And that was kind of the intent, but the other ones I was hoping to be more useful, but I found out this one that I use is more than I needed almost. I do throw the other ones in here and there, like right there, and then branch off another piece, the little piece on it, and so kind of give it a little more So it worked out. I was like, okay, cool. And that's what I wanted. I wanted this bottom base to have almost veins, I guess, if you think about it, but they're roots. Make it look alive. Tell the story of the base, you know. And you see right here, it kind of connects. You can see that it's there you go, see? And that worked. Just going around and adding here and there. Around the tree stump is where it's really going to make sense, because that's where really the roots are. These roots are probably more from the grass than anything, or just random little twigs that are established in that base. But it kind of gives the impression of veins. So. And who knows, maybe I can use these as veins later on. They look so similar, you know, some creature with more veins. It doesn't have to be just roots. We can expand our thinking. And here we go. So here's where I put the roots a little bit. You can tell that I'm scaling them a lot bigger than their other side, because this is where that tree is, and you're gonna want bigger roots where that tree is gonna be, because it's gonna be established. And so I'm just kind of branching out from this. So now when you look at it from a distance, you kind of get that impression. You see those roots in there. And so that noise modifier almost looks like Freddy Krueger kind of skinish. Had modeled a Freddy Krueger years ago, a long time ago. I want to dig that up. So this render right here was like starting to get closer to the look that I wanted, and I was like, okay, it's not there, but then I start turning on lights and doing little things here and there to get that setting. You'll see in a bit. So now I import the brushes that are the, what do you call them, insert mesh brushes, and I start using these. And these, what I want, are kind of like hanging off the top part. These are the branches that are just there. So I'm kind of pushing and pulling, using the move tool. You don't have to use exactly what you made. You can move them around, so that's what's good. And I usually will try to, well, in this video, I try to make them around the tree a little bit more, but they're just every so often on the other side, just to kind of give that impression that there's roots still. And I want them to kind of be hanging off the base just as well. And I'm just kind of pushing and pulling them, trying to give them a little bit of a integrated look. And depending on how I do this, I might weld them or mesh them to the base, but that'll tell in time how that comes about. So now you can see the roots are coming out of the side, and that's what I kind of wanted. I wanted like roots from that tree, and you can see like how it's, you know, more established on this end. And it's more of a, for the look of the model. So when you look at it, you kind of got like one point of interest on the side, but on the other side, I need to add some other point of interest. So either I'll put that pitchfork that's in the reference to kind of keep your eye like going from the bottom left to the Pumpkinhead to the back, you know, just kind of, I kind of got an idea in my mind to how I want it to look. And I think one of the videos I actually kind of sketch over it and show what the direction I was going to go in. And you can see right here, I just sliced that off. I didn't need it. I sliced it off, and I just pushed and pulled. And I guess I changed my mind. So making it a little thicker, playing with the little details here and there. So now you can see the layering. So as I moved along, we started with the base, added some kind of dirt. Then the next phase was like the roots, And then now this phase is adding the roots that are coming out of the mesh to actually come, add another layer. So there's like 3 layers to this on top of the base mesh. The base mesh was its own thing. And that's not counting that I'm going to add grass. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it sculpted because I want to print this, like I said, or if I'm going to go a different route and make, just like little grass pieces here and there. Because some of the references show a lot of grass, and then some of them are just real dry. But I would like to have grass, and I want to put some leaves on those pumpkins too, kind of give them like that pumpkin patch feel, And who knows, these roots could be from the pumpkins and just burrowed in there. It's been so long since I watched the movie. I need to sit down and find it. I don't know if it's on what's streaming it now online, but I need to find this. It was on, I don't know what it was, but it was on there, one of the streaming platforms, middle of the year, I thought. But I didn't watch it. I think I watched parts of it. So right now, I'm going to try to get his footprints into the dirt to kind of give him a little more, that way it looks like he's there, Just put a little more footprint. And yeah, we're going to put grass over it, but like I said, it's like layering a cake. You're gonna build it up, and that's okay, because these little details are gonna give off to the other details, and they complement each other. So the tree's getting a little bit loving on the side. It's kind of like, all right, let's integrate this tree. Let's get this root kind of burrowing in here, and just sculpting it back in, and it's kind of coming alive now. When you look at it from what it was, it's starting to come to its own. And that's what's fun about sculpting in this program. It's not like any other program I've ever used, and it's always fun how it ends up. But yeah, this is most of the video. So to recap on everything, we put the tree in. I added the base. I put some detail in there. We sculpted on the tree, and then put the brushes that I created from other videos and brought them into here. So right now I'm playing with the settings, and these are old settings. So watch this. I got 2 lights. I did a 3-point lighting system in there years ago. It was too hot, and I'm like, okay, now the shadows are too heavy, but let me go tweak these shadows. So let's soften up these shadows. Let's change the angle. Let's change the how many, the count. And then I changed the heaviness of the shadow, and now you can start seeing like, ooh, yeah. So I was like, let me find this texture now. And once I get the texture, I'm like, oh yeah. I was like, I'm saving these settings. Yeah. But I hope you learned something. I hope this is informative. But yeah, that's most of it. Thank you for watching.